All right, folks, doing the Trask CheckM8 today. There's quite a few videos on this, but what I'm going to try to focus on are some of the tools that you might use. So there's a few things that I've got, for example, some of these real sort of thin line, small hex heads, some cool kind of, some cool wobblers and some things like that that we might be able to try to see what we can use to get in there. So maybe even something like this as an example. So I'm going to try a bunch of different stuff. I've seen a lot of videos where guys just sort of fast forward through the actual part of getting some of these bolts on. And so I'm just kind of getting some things prepared here. Let me get a light. Be a little easier to see in here. I don't know how easy it's going to be able to be to get in here, but you can see the cover down there, and there's 3 bolts in the front and there's 3 in back, and really one of the most important parts here is just getting stuff out of the way. So take these covers off over here, this oil line right here in front. I'm going to disconnect that, pinch it off, move it out of the way. Same thing on the other side. That bolt all the way on the other end in the front is going to be a pain to get to. So you just want to have as much clearance as you possibly can get in here. And so what I'm going to try to do, I'm not going to film actually going through this whole process. I'm actually just going to try to figure out what gets each of the bolts off, and then I'll just kind of get everything to where it's finger loose that I can get it out, and then I'll show you what tools I used to get those bolts out. But I don't think there's any way around this job. It's not hard, but it's just one of those that's just going to take some time. And again, if all you've got is just some hex keys, you can get them all in there. From what I understand, there is some Loctite on these bolts. So obviously once you kind of break them, they're going to be pretty easy to get out. And depending on how big your hands are, you can just get in there and sort of fish them out once you can get them finger tight. So we'll see how that goes. But let me get all this stuff kind of cleaned up here and stuff moved out of the way. Start working on some tools on what it's going to take me to get to all these bolts. So be back in a minute. All right, folks, I kind of found the secret weapon here. I was hoping this would be it. It was surfing tools one night on Amazon, and I ran across this little bitty tiny ratchet, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see this in here. I'll pull the rat. I'm having a hard time getting there we go. So let me just kind of, I'm holding the camera in my hand. I've got this, no, you can see, I've got this little, and I'll bring the ratchet out here in a second, but turns out this middle screw right here, this was the one, it probably had a tube of Loctite on it. It was the hardest one to get to break it. And man, if you were trying to just do this by hand, it gets to a point where you're gonna have to get your fingers in there and see if you can get it out. But anyway, here's the contraption. So I'll put a link to this guy. So this is the tiniest wrench that I've ever seen. And then you just want to, you can use the little bits. So it's not actually, I'm only got one hand here, but this pops out. So you can pop any bit in, and then the ratchet actually is just this little piece right here. And you can use that same little bit on the end. So you can use it as a ratchet, or you can take that same bit and put it down here and then just use it like that. And then what I did was I found another 3/16. I had a longer, basically, so I could get a handle on it. And it's got a little magnet in there too, like your power driver, so you can see it just sort of snapped in there. And then you can use this end down here to even get a little bit more leverage. But you can get in there, and now you've got a long enough, tiny with enough clearance, and you can get in there pretty much to every single one of these bolts. Some of the other ones are easier to get to, like obviously this one right here on the edge, super easy to get to. But now with this contraption, now you can just, instead of having to get a key and just back it out, turn by turn by turn, you actually kind of have a ratchet here for that. So I think this is going to work, at least to get all of them out. I've got all of them loose. So basically at this point, this was the tool that was able to get me to pretty much every single one of them. And again, you get this nice little ratchet feature. So instead of just using this actual key, putting it in, turning it, moving it up, put it, you know, reseating it, turning it just you know, an eighth of a turn or something, and doing that, because it's a lot. I may actually count on one of these screws how many, you know, you're only getting about, you know, maybe a quarter of a turn for this bolt right here every single time you turn it. So if you had to pull the hex key out, so now it's loose enough that you know, I could probably just get it out with my hand, get with my finger, or just with an actual key, because it starts to spin once it gets loose enough. With this ratchet on here, it will just, with the ratchet feature, this ratchet's not super great, as you would imagine. It's good enough for a little bit, but then after that, you'll probably want to use this end of it to just get it the last few turns. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. That was really kind of the whole purpose of the video, is to find, I've seen these guys just kind of cranking through here trying to use all kinds of different tools to figure out how to get these bolts out, but that worked out pretty good. So let me get this thing, let me get all of them out, see if I end up needing to use any other tools. So you can see here, like with this one in the front, you can see it or not, I can't cat this thing. So it's just a slow roll. This ratchet, you know, it's not 100 teeth, you know, so, but it's better than having to reseat the Allen wrench every single time. So this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to have some bloody knuckles. There's no question about that. And you can see here, you can see that little black piece kind of rotating around. You just want to try to get, with whatever tool you have, that you can make this thing as long as possible. You just want to try to get as much leverage on it as you can and just start rotating it, because there's a ton of Loctite on these, or some kind of thread sealant or something. So it takes a pretty good amount of time. Like, I can't just thread it out with my finger right here. You got to really get this thing out almost where it's all the way out before you can get finger pressure on it and pull it out. So it's just a long, slow process, but this little ratchet's helping for sure. Here's another tool that works pretty well. If you've got one of these screwdrivers, I'll show it to you in a second, but you can see it's like a ratchet. It'll fall on and off. And then I've got these, I'll put a link to these, but these are these really thin, like kind of low profile hex. And then this thing is, you can bend it around. So once you get them loose, I actually broke a couple of them with this that I could get to pretty easy on the other side. But once they get loose, if you can get to it with this thing, because this thing has a ratchet in it. So once you get it on there, you can just rotate the handle and you can start getting it off. So this is a good, sorry, I had the video sideways. So this is a good tool too. All right, so on this side, that first one right here, that's about the easiest one to get to. This one back here isn't too difficult too. This one, again, I just used that low profile 3/16 in my little snap-on, what is that, 1/4 inch nut driver, or ratchet, I mean. And it's a good, so it's got like 80 teeth or something like that, so you can crank on it pretty good and get it out pretty fast. Oh my god, sorry about that. You will have some bloody knuckles getting out of here. I was actually going to try to take this thing off right here. I pulled this off, but man, this thing is on here so tight or something. I've got you know, these little, like, you know, for hoses, I got these little hose clamps. I was just going to clamp it off. I saw another dude, another video, he just pulled this thing off, but man, I can't. That thing is so tight. So I just decided, all right, I'm just going to work around this thing. But there's some kind of white thread locker on these bolts, and it pretty much takes them to where they need to be all the way out. So that one's loose enough now. But anyway, I'll kind of do a review of the tools, all the different tools that I used in a second, as soon as I get all this stuff out of here. All right, on this back one here, you could mess around with it and try to get, you know, like one of those where it sort of rocks around or bends or something like that. But this is just my snap-on 1/4 inch with a little bit with an extension, and not having any problems getting this one out. So anyway, I'll recap on the tools here once I get this thing out. This is the last one. All right, I finally got this thing out, and then we have to do a little surgery on this thing to take this piece off, because we need to take this out and put it on the new one. But I just wanted to recap the tools that I used here. So you need a pair of pliers, and I really use these for when this thing would get stuck, like on the ratchet, it'd get stuck on the bolt, and I could just reach in there and pop it up. Fortunately, I didn't need this, but I'll probably need it when I'm fishing stuff back in. But it's your magnet, just in case something falls down there. This is the let me see what I do with those. So again, I will make a link, or I'll put a link in the description to these, but that's what these things are. And so this is a 3/16, but it's a low profile bit. And then I just use my snap-on 1/4 inch with this one extension. I was able to get to several bolts, I think maybe like 4 of them with this thing, either with this connected directly there or with this. And then again, this little guy was a lifesaver. And then finding the longest, I don't even know how big this hex is, but just finding the longest one that you can get in here to get some leverage, because especially trying to break those nuts off, there's no way with your fingers you'll be able to do that. So you'll have to, they're like, these bolts are in there pretty tight. You can see, you know, they got some kind of thread locker or something on them. I've seen some guys, they're not even using thread locker when they Loctite when they put stuff back in. The other one that I used too was this guy, and I got it all whacked up because I was trying to actually break a couple of those bolts in the back. But this normally is straight. But this is nice because it's a ratchet, so once you can get a hold of one of them, you can really start to spin it out of there. So it works out pretty good. And of course, once you get that off there, you want to be real careful that you don't drop any bolts or drop anything in there. To get this thing out on the other side, I don't know what this doohickey is right here, but I ended up just taking off these things, and then that helped me. I actually slid the plate out. I had to kind of turn it sideways and slid the plate out. You can see you'll definitely get some of that action going on your fingers, banging them on the cylinders and stuff. So anyway, let's do the next part. All right, so the next step of this thing is you got this gasket that goes over the top. You're gonna have to reuse this because the new one, oh wait a minute, it does come with that, so you don't need to reuse it. I thought I remember watching the video and this had to get reused, but you do have to take it off because there's this little contraption that goes in here and you got to get that thing out. And so I just use these. I've got these plastic picks. You definitely don't want to use like pliers or something and just yank it out, because you do not want to cut this thing. And it's not hard to get out. You just use one of these things and just kind of pry it out. All right, so I'm gonna put this back together with the new one, go from there. All right, so this is what it looks like when you get the new one in there. So you basically just kind of have to pull this gasket up. I use this little hole right here, and again, use my plastic pick, and then just kind of lifted it up, and then got it up. You gotta take the whole thing off, but you just get it off to where you can basically put that piece right back in the way that it was into the other one. And then you just seal it back up, put all the gasket stuff back in there, and then reseat it. This does not come with any screws at all, so you reuse the stock screws. I've seen some guys grab some arc bolts and stuff for it to make it a little bit easier to get off. In fact, That's not a bad idea, actually. But I'm gonna just take these bolts over to my kind of my bench grinder. I've got a wheel on it, and I'm just gonna get all this Loctite out of there and put this thing back on. I'm not gonna even use any Loctite. I'm just gonna put it back on like that. But I'm gonna get all this crap out of the threads, and then just start putting it back on and go from there. All right, next step. All right, so I got it back together. Got all my connectors put together. Got it in there. That, and of course, I just ran, you can see the tube right there. I just ran it up underneath there, and then it'll just sit cozy right behind that black plate, you know, that sits right over the battery and everything right there. Man, on the other side here, you can see we got installed that back bolt in the middle is the MFer, man. That's the one that's going to give you the most trouble. Again, with those tools that I showed you guys, you will be able to get to all of them. Your fingers, your knuckles will be bloody, and it's definitely just a pain in the ass gig. If I wouldn't have been filming and trying to do all that stuff, it would have been a good 30 to 40 minute. Once you figure out the tools and stuff, once you kind of figure out what's going to work where, getting it back in is, you know, threading all the bolts, getting them back in is fine. Again, that one in the back, you just can't get your hand in there. Honestly, if on your bike, if you can get this tube out of the way and just pop it up, you'll have a lot more luck. You'll be able to swing your ratchet and stuff a lot easier on that back bolt. I didn't do it. That thing is on there tight, so I just figured I would just work around it, and it worked. But anyway, that is the Trask CheckM8 install. Hopefully this helped a few folks with you guys doing it in your own garage. All right, man. See you guys later.